Well, hello everyone. Welcome to a playoff preview Lynx fan crash out edition of the Missing Lynx podcast. This will be a podcast and a live stream. I still am not settled on the name. And the guy that allows me to record these podcasts for some semblance of dollary dues, Mitch Hansen. How's it going, man?
I'm doing well. I sometimes second guess myself, but no, I'm just kidding. I'm just totally joking. No, I'm doing well. I am enjoying this kind of relaxing, a little bit lazier Saturday before we get rolling into things starting Sunday. But how are you doing?
I was doing a little bit better at 159 when I still had the belief that Natisha Heidemann was going to win the sixth player of the year voting.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we'll start with that. I mean, Naz Hillman won it and it wasn't even close. 44 votes. I think some people were worried, is Shepard going to take votes away from Heidemann? Didn't matter. Heidemann finished with 22, Shep with 4. Malunga and Whitcomb both got 1, but it was a runaway. I mean, Hillman doubled the voting. I definitely did not expect it to be a runaway award win. What about you, Mitch?
No, I definitely agree. Excuse me for looking over at my screen for people that are watching live. I'm typing as I'm listening, but I agree. I actually thought it was going to be a lot closer. I mean, I thought it would be maybe even somewhat similar to like Defensive Player of the Year. I'm glad that it wasn't a sixth Player of the Year, but that's another conversation for another day. But I thought
we can have that conversation now too.
Some people might know that I am not a huge fan of awards, but I thought it was going to be closer, to be honest. I thought it would be maybe separated by a few, but I am a little surprised too that Jess Shepard only got 4. That maybe is a little bit more surprising to me, but I mean, either way, Minnesota got two players on another award. They had 2 players on the Defensive Player of the Year award with Alana Smith, who obviously shared it with Aja Wilson, and then Nafisa Collier. But I know it's horseshoes or close only start, or what's that saying? Whatever it is, only counts in horseshoes.
Hand grenades and horseshoes.
Yeah, there you go. Whatever. It's close enough doesn't count. That's what I'm getting at. And they didn't end up winning it, but I think this is something, you could throw this into the Defensive Player of the Year, 6th Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, maybe MVP. It's something that's going to fuel Minnesota, and I think that will only kind of help things or kind of benefit things, hopefully, when it's all said and done.
Yeah, if there's one thing I've learned covering this team for 2 years, it's they really do kind of take things to heart, especially stuff like this. Like, I think they will be pissed that T didn't win it, and I think T will be pretty upset that she didn't win it. But it's not like upset we're going to go to the media and talk about deers and bucks. It's T's probably going to drop 25 the next game and play out of her mind the rest of the playoffs, just like Lan has been playing out of her mind. I mean, I just looked it up, and one thing that it's always interesting to me is when you're reading voters' kind of explanations of why they voted. And Naz Hillman, I think objectively, yes, deserving of the award. She had a really good season, but she started 17 games. So it's been interesting and kind of annoying to me that some people will say Fee missed 11 games. She's not qualified to be MVP because she's missed too many games. But Naz Hillman starts almost half the season, but she's qualified for the 6th Player of the Year award.
Yeah, I do think that that's something that should be looked at. There should be, I don't want to say maybe like a fourth of the season would be too little or too, I don't know. I don't know how you do that, but I think if you start maybe, a fourth of the season or less, you should be in consideration. But I mean, look at Natisha Heidemann. She came off every game this year. Now that's credit to Courtney Williams for staying healthy and being on the court and starting at the point guard position. But that is part of it where I think maybe there would have been a little bit of a, it would have went in Natisha Heidemann's favor a little bit just for the fact that she did come off the bench for every single game, and Nas started 17 games. But I mean, Nas still had a great season. She still played well, and she's definitely deserving. But I am a little surprised.
Again, surprised that it was close, that it wasn't close. I thought for sure it would be closer.
Mm-hmm.
And then seeing kind of, as people have been posting their ballots, who the kind of mental gymnastics to not vote for Fee but then vote for Hillman. It's just interesting to me. A couple people in the chat here. McKinney definitely is crashing out. Appreciate you. Dustin, Nas started a lot of games, completely agree. T deserved it, he also says. And then he adds I think it bodes well for Fee and the MVP. I mean, it could. They're announcing that tomorrow, aren't they?
Yeah, Sunday they'll be announcing that. They obviously announced the finalists yesterday or on Friday, but MVP will be named on Sunday. I would imagine around the same time, but the games might throw a wrench into that, so we'll see.
Dustin also adds a little bit of a disparaging Becky remark that I am not going to agree nor disagree with, but we do love our white-tailed deer here in Lynx country. And then Jenny, out of the ones up for 6th player of the year, who's still going for the championship. It stinks, but this is fuel. T deserved it. We know it. I think that's probably what will be the word around shoot around in pregame tomorrow, is that T deserved it. But I mean, it's kind of how this season has been going, where everybody has been sacrificing personal accolades. I mean, T's a starting point guard in this league and is playing off the bench. Fee misses that second to the last game of the season, knowing that it might be the MVP that she's kind of punting on. Lan, I mean, there's games where she's playing 20 minutes because Jess is the better matchup. It really seems like this team winning a championship is the goal. Would you agree, Mitch?
Yeah, I agree. And just to go quick back to the comments about T deserving it. Yeah, she absolutely deserves it. This isn't just because she didn't win doesn't mean she doesn't deserve it. She's definitely deserving, and I don't think that it takes away anything from the season that she's had. But it's it is unfortunate that she doesn't get the actual award. But going back to the championship question too, and Jenny, thank you for submitting that question. But it is a regular season award too. I think a lot of people tend to forget that. I'm not saying that Jenny's forgetting that by saying that comment, but I do think that a lot of people take a lot of stock into what happens in the postseason, and it's a regular season award, and that's just the reality of it. And I think it should be at the end of the year or after the postseason, and the postseason should be considered. But that I'm not in that position to make those decisions. But I do think that championship is on the mind of the Lynx, and that's something that is maybe a little bit stronger now. And I think that's ultimately, if they can get a championship at the end of the season, they'll trade all of these awards for that, and that's the main thing.
I mean, you look at a championship at the end of this season and like what it would do. I mean, one, it would be theoretically the start of a potential second dynasty. Oh, that's probably from me, Dustin. Let me fix that. It would be potentially the start of a second dynasty of Cheryl having, revamped this really on the fly. I mean,
when doing it so fast.
I mean, Maya Moore retired, and then 2 years later, they're back in the playoffs and they're kind of humming again.
Right.
So I think it would mean a lot for her legacy. I think you look at a player like K-Mac, and all of a sudden K-Mac goes from she's a really Lynx player to, if she finishes her career here, maybe we're talking about her having her jersey retired. And the first championship for Fee. I mean, that's something that everyone will remember, because I would assume, unless she steps away from basketball early, it will be the first of many for her. So I think, when you look at the individual awards, it would have been nice, but having that championship, I think, solidifies a lot more legacy moves.
Yeah.
Do you feel the same way?
I agree. I mean, when people look at it at the end of their career, they look at how many championships you have. That's what, we do with comparing the Lynx just as a franchise with other franchises throughout history. Like, how many championships they have? They have 4. Okay, they stack up here. So ultimately, a championship is what you're going for. And I think that's one thing that Cheryl Reeve and her coaching staff does really well. They instill that in their culture. That is part of their culture. Is we're a championship culture. It's championship or bust. If we don't win a championship, the season's not a success, regardless of what, if they're rebuilding or if they're in a dynasty or whatever it may be. But that's something that Cheryl preaches from day one of training camp. Is we're ultimately fighting for a championship. Everything else will follow, but we're fighting for a championship, and that's the ultimate goal. And I think this year, maybe for the first time since that dynasty era, it is probably I would say it is the first time since that dynasty era where they are, favored to win the WNBA title. And that's the actual expectation going into the season.
Yeah.
And that's, that this very well could be the start of something. I mean, you look at, the dynasty era was a little different where they had some shortcomings kind of in the middle of it and even towards the end of it, like the 2016 season, coming short against LA and then bouncing back in 2017. But this is it feels very similar to that, where, it could be that loss in 2024 for the Lynx could be the kind of the launching pad for what takes place over the next, 2, 3, 5 years. And knowing Cheryl, she's going to put everything she can, every resource she can, anything possible, to make sure that she takes advantage of Nafisa Collier in this window, and that they're competitive for years to come. So this could be the start of something great. And ultimately they have to win it this year for that to start. But that's definitely something that they want to do again, is have that kind of dynasty. I mean, everybody does, but that's something that they always think about and they always strive for, which is great.
I mean, Cheryl also has I know she's not thinking about this. That's why I am. So Cheryl Carly, if you're listening, I will do all of the thinking about your legacy for you. But I mean, if she were to get another dynasty run out like that, and she's coaching for another 5, 6, 7 years in Minnesota, wins another 4 championships, I mean, she solidifies her legacy maybe forever.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's hard to say forever, but like it's so hard to see how any coach would ever catch, if she were to win 7 championships, 2 as an assistant coach, all of the wins. I mean, for Cheryl, a second dynasty would kind of be just the icing on the cake.
Oh yeah. I mean, she would almost have to, and I'm not trying to be too dramatic, but she would almost put herself into the John Wooden conversation as far as the coaches. And she's already one of the best coaches in the WNBA that we've ever seen. And, being able to even add just one more championship to that would be phenomenal. But if she goes on another stretch of, even 2, 3, 4 championships, I think it's very worthy of putting her in that all-time great spot with, John Wooden, or you name who else. Like she would be not just in the WNBA, it would be basketball. And that's obviously very, very rare. But it just speaks to the level of, talent and, leadership that Cheryl has, and just her ability to pull people together and kind of create them as one, is unmatched. And it's definitely paid off so far, and it could continue to.
Tom says we need Naz Hillman in Minnesota so we can have 2 Nazes in Minnesota. I'm not going to fight you on that. What I would say is Parkway Pizza. Maybe don't change it back to Hunk if you love Naz for a couple days. Just so
I did see our buddy Terry Horseman had on his social medias that they had switched it to Hunk if you love Alana Smith. So that's
shout out Parkway Pizza.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And man, I can't remember the breakfast joint right next to it. Karen's?
I guess I'm not sure.
I'll look it up in the ad read here, but that breakfast place next to it is great. So if you want to just eat food all day, hit that place up, and then Parkway Pizza. Cole asks what we think about Fee winning the MVP. I'm going to tease that before I have Mitch answer it and put him on the spot. And we are going to go to a quick ad read first. Well, hello. Thank you, Livestream Andrew. This is Ad Read Andrew. And today we have Firehawk Construction and Remodeling, the presenting sponsor for the Missing Links podcast. Firehawk Construction and Remodeling strives to inspire people to follow their ideas, working with respect and understanding to create a quality, tailored result. Firehawk Construction and Remodeling, located in Blaine and serving in the North Metro area, is here to help you with your building and remodeling needs. I can say personally, thanks to Firehawk Construction and Remodeling, I have a beautiful deck in my backyard and countless projects that I started, they finished. Get started on your new deck or remodel today by calling Isaac at 763-710-5686. I want as proof that I also put in the work. It is Hazel's and it is phenomenal. They have like oatmeal Belgian waffles. Oh, wonderful. Also, Sarah Jane's Bakery. Sarah Jane's Bakery is also really good. A lot of good food places in Northeast.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on the MVP? Because I have been pretty I feel like it's probably Asia's at this point, just from the ballots I've seen and how many people are citing the games missed. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if you would have asked me probably 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I would have said Fee, like kind of similar to what we saw in the 6th Player of the Year voting, where it'd be, like 44-22, that kind of stuff. Now, I would agree. I think I would lean Asia. Just not me personally, but I think that's how it will lean. I think it'll be close, but I do think that, it is a what have you done for me lately kind of voting. Maybe it shouldn't be. I don't think it should be, but that's just how the voters vote. And that's, Cheryl Reeve talked about it on Terry Horseman's podcast, Lynx Happy Hour recently. And she said that, a lot of those voters, they're not watching every single game. And she kind of had mentioned, too, that, she kind of asked media members to become more kind of knowledgeable, maybe not knowledgeable, but just kind of be more aware of the players that are in there, watch their games, watch what they do, the impact they make, all of that kind of stuff. She talked about how once upon a time it was the coaches that voted, there was flaws in that system as well. So it will never be a perfect system with voting. But I do think that, Asia's the more popular name. She's the flashier name. I think that that's ultimately what's going to happen. Now, me personally, if I had to vote, I would vote Fee just because, well, it's probably a little bit of bias because I watch more Lynx games, obviously, but I've seen
the same bias we were just talking about.
Yeah. But I do think that, she's deserving of it. A lot of, Alyssa Thomas is deserving of it too. She's having an outstanding season. But I would, I think Fee is deserving of it. I think if it were me, I would vote for Fee. But just because of the season in totality and just, like, not to keep referencing Cheryl, but Cheryl in the Lynx Happy Hour podcast had said, typically it's the best player on the best team, or the best defensive player on the best defensive team, which was Alana Smith. But that's kind of the downfall of the way that voting works. And, Asia, to her credit, she played unbelievable at the end of the season, and put herself back into that conversation, if not atop the conversation. And I do, when it's all said and done, I think on Sunday, when we hear what the outcome is, I do think it'll be Asia Wilson.
Yeah, I struggle with it because I am a very big availability is the best ability type of person. Yeah. And Fee did miss 11 games. And when you're looking down the history of the MVPs in the WNBA, it is, I think, 88% of games played was the lowest award winner a few 7 or 8 years ago. I can't remember. I wrote about it if anyone wants to go and read it. If you don't, it's fine. But it's really hard for me to overlook that historic precedent. But then Fee is such a unique case because she probably only misses 7 games if the Lynx were battling for a playoff spot. She probably doesn't miss the extra 2 or 3 with the ankle. She traveled with the team when they went to Atlanta and Indiana. and then she probably doesn't sit out game 43. So it's, how do you weigh? Because I think she's had the better season. Like, I think Fee objectively has had a better season than Asia. But how do you weigh, the team success kind of punishing her in the games aspect, and the games aspect being something that I would have gotten hung up on if I had the vote? I think if push came to absolute shove, I probably would have went Fee, because 50, 40, 90 season on 63% true shooting from a defensive player of the year, who, if you look at the advanced metrics, Fee's defensive metrics were as good as Land's, just not as good as last year's.
Right.
So I would have went with Fee, but I understand people that make the games played case. I truly understand. It's the other people that are like, Asia means more to her team. And it's like, I mean, none of us really know how much they mean to our team.
Right.
Like, everything focuses around both of them.
Well, and the other thing too is, like, you look at the end of the season. Obviously, the end of the season that Asia Wilson had was remarkable. But you also look at that last matchup between the Lynx and Aces. I think a lot of people are really tuning into that to see how they matched up MVP wise, and Asia did better than Fee that game. Fee didn't have, she still had a fine game, but she didn't have an MVP type game. And, that I think plays a big role into it. And that might be, kind of, people are on the fence, that might have swayed them. But, you look at the end of the year too, and like, when you have to do, let's say, a homework assignment, if you're in school or if you have to do something for work and you're getting close to the deadline, you're really paying attention to that and you got to get that done. It's kind of the same thing with voting, where once you get closer to the voting deadline, people are like, oh crap, I got to watch more games, got to pay attention a little bit more. And they were probably, I'm not saying that's probably not fair of me to assume this, but there's probably a lot of voters that were paying attention that last month of the season more than they would have. And during that month, Asia Wilson was doing better. So I do think that weighs heavily on it, but I don't know. I digress, because I've been preaching about this for the last, I think, 2 weeks, but it's just the way it goes.
Fee said her mission when we asked her after they lost against the Liberty. We asked her what she learned from the season, and she said to never let it get close enough for the refs to matter again. Yeah. And when I look at this season, they didn't let it get close enough for anything to matter. So I do think a lot of these awards are getting, the Lynx they didn't have to play basketball since the end of July. They just got to kind of roll out there and have fun, which maybe kind of took the gusto. Mitch, when we come back, I'm going to throw us to another break here. When we come back, though, I do want to preview the Mercury series a little bit, because I have a piece coming out on it tomorrow, and I was kind of shocked by some things. And we're back with another ad read, this time for Pence Homes, the presenting sponsor of Hitting the Hardwood Network. From the best tools and technology to transparency throughout the entire process, Nate Pence and the Pence Homes team is the top choice for buyers, sellers, and is proud to support you and your home ownership goals. Get started today by calling 612-308-1122 or by emailing info@pencehomes.com. .com worked today, Nate? It's because you helped me out that the .com worked. I still have no clue why that doesn't. Anyways, so I dug into the Mercury. First, I'll just ask you, what are your kind of general overall thoughts of just Lynx Mercury semifinals?
Yeah, as I was watching Game 3 of the series, and I know I even texted you during the game that I wanted, me personally, just as far as how the Lynx match up with both teams, I thought the better matchup for the Lynx would have been New York. I just think that they're too banged up. I think I don't want to say any team's an easy team, because there's no easy team at this point of the season. But I thought New York would maybe be the easier team. But it ended up being Phoenix. Phoenix is playing awesome. And it will, I'm very intrigued to see how the first few games of this series goes. Because I think it'll be very different, because Minnesota has not faced a Phoenix team at full strength. Kalia Copper missed all of the games that Minnesota played against Phoenix during the regular season, which WNBA scheduling, we'll get on another podcast and talk about that, because all 4 games happen before July 16th. And, there's a lot of unknown with this series. And I think that, there's a couple things that I'm really keying in on. And I was writing a preview on this with Ace Pedraza at Winsider, just kind of previewing this whole series. And there's a few things that I'm really keying in on as X factors. One being turnovers. The other is being, the 3-point shooting, I think, will play a huge role in this. Minnesota is a great 3-point shooting team, and they get up a lot of shots from deep. Phoenix is kind of the exact opposite. They aren't a team that really shoots threes at a high clip. And that's a credit to who they have as, on their team, and they kind of play more inside out than outside in. But that is something I'm looking at and keying in on. And then with the first round matchup with New York, I think Phoenix, in their loss, they turned the ball over a little bit more and they didn't shoot as well. That's, you could say that with every team in every game, but if they can hang on, take care of the ball, both teams. Minnesota has had issues with doing this too. You just got to take care of the ball offensively and kind of keep that composure. Those are a couple things that I'm really looking forward to, and just kind of keying in on. And then finally, not to keep going on a rant here, but just getting off to a hot start. That's the biggest thing for Minnesota specifically, because what did we see in the first 2 games against Golden State? They fell behind by double digits, and it was a uphill battle all the way back. And that can't happen. That can't keep happening in the semifinals, because Phoenix, in their win against New York, what is one thing they did is they got off to a hot start, and then they kind of rode that to victory. Their loss against New York, they fell behind, or they didn't get off to such a hot start. So that'll be very key if we're looking at just for the Lynx specifically. Them getting off to a hot start and not having to continuously fight back will be very key, because these are 2 very, they're almost opposite teams as far as maybe style and just kind of how they flow offensively. And then Phoenix is a first half team, Minnesota is a second half team. So it's kind of a tricky series to kind of compare or kind of preview and look forward to. But I think it'll be a great series. And I'm really interested to see, now that these 2 teams are back at full strength, how they match up, because that's what you want. You want both teams at full strength.
Yeah. I kind of dug into it and watched some film on them, went into their advanced stats and tried to just, I have not watched as much Phoenix this year as I had Golden State. So Phoenix is kind of an enigma to me, but digging into it, I believe what I sent the group chat was painfully average. Pretty much every advanced stat, they are between 5th and 8th. Offensive rating, they're fine. Defensive rating, they're fine. Net rating, they're fine. Assisted turnover, they're fine. Shooting, they're not ideal. They shoot sub 50% from 2-point range, which is weird. But offensively, the thing that I thought was so interesting, just watching them and the stats back it up, is when you have Thomas, Sabally, and now I'm blanking on her name. You just said her name.
Kalia
Copper on the floor together. That amounts for 80% of their usage. So the other 2 players on the floor touch the ball sparingly. Really interesting how that's going to work, because Thomas is kind of the hub of everything. And then she's kind of surrounded by players that are high volume shooters. And then they don't offensive rebound. They rank 9th in offensive rebound percentage. They focus a lot on getting back in transition, not allowing fast breaks, which is if the Lynx have an Achilles heel, it's defensive rebounding and ball movement. And it's almost like Phoenix purposely plays with very little ball movement and very little defensive rebounding or offensive rebounding. And then on defense, again, they're just fine. They're fairly good at defensive rebounding. They've forced the 3rd most turnovers from opposing teams, not necessarily steals, but just mistakes. But they're not elite really at anything. Their effective field goal against is middle of the pack. So it's, for me, looking at this matchup, it's kind of the same thing I felt with Golden State, where it's Minnesota is just so much better than them in almost every statistical category, but they're a team that's coached well by T-Bolt, and they're a team that is led by Alyssa Thomas, who is an MVP candidate. So it's going to be really weird to watch how this goes, because it seems like another team that's going to just play into the Lynx's scheme as their strength.
I could really see Phoenix really, I mean, they do it more often than not, but really feeding Alyssa Thomas and Satu Sabli inside in this series, taking advantage of Minnesota's maybe lack of, depth with the size and in the paint. I mean, yeah, you have Alana Smith, but I think, maybe Jess Shepard will play a bigger role in this series just with her physicality. But that is something I think Phoenix will at least try to do early on in this series and see where that takes them. But it is going into the series, Minnesota, I think, is the better team. I'm not just saying that because they're the top team in the league and the number one seed, but I do think Minnesota
their net rating is over triple the Mercury. Just objectively looking at it, I don't think you're saying anything you need to defend. Yeah, Minnesota is the better team.
yeah. I mean, they are a better team, and I do think they're going to end up taking the series. I'm sure we'll get into kind of what we're thinking with the series in totality, but I mean, Phoenix will put up a fight. I think each game is going to be single digits. We're not going to see a 30-point game like we did the first game in Golden State, or we're not going to see, maybe 20-point game. I do think it's going to be, back and forth and down the stretch, kind of like what we saw with the Phoenix New York series. Each game kind of coming down the stretch. I think it'll be very similar. And you're at that point of the playoffs where every game is going to be close. You have such a thin margin of error. And I do think Minnesota will ultimately win the series. But I do think Phoenix, it's tough to face them on their home court too. That crowd was absolutely electric in game 3 against New York. And, that's something that Minnesota had a little bit of a tough time with, even spanning back to the 2024 finals, but, specifically with that game in Golden State. That makes a big difference. But on the other side, on the flip side, Phoenix has to deal with that in Minnesota too. So you kind of take it both ways.
Jude asks in the chat, or says Masha's significant minutes. V. Marie mentions being with or without Dejanay Carrington. Do you feel like Cheryl will mess with that bench at all? I know you said maybe a bigger role for Jess, but what are your thoughts on the bench units?
Cheryl is very, regardless of who they're playing, she's done she's been very consistent at playing her same rotation and just kind of sticking to what works for them. Now I'm saying that, and I just literally just said that Jess Shepard will probably see more time. But I do think, we could probably see a little bit of extra time for Masha and Jess specifically. But I think for the most part, at least in the early, at least game 1, but maybe game 2 as well, we'll see something very similar to Minnesota rotation wise. And I think that regardless of who they would have played, it would have been kind of the same mentality, whether it's New York or Phoenix, because they're both kind of the same style, or kind of, do things the same way, or kind of match up the same way, I should say. But I think in games 1, maybe game 2, we're going to see something very similar to what we even saw in round 1 against Golden State. But if let's say Minnesota does fall in one of the first 2 games, which I don't think they will, but if they do lose in one of the first 2 games, I could see them, trying something new, just kind of switching things up, especially in game 3 in Phoenix. So that's when I'm kind of focusing on maybe that, them switching things up if they do it all. But Cheryl is usually pretty consistent at what she does. And the thing is with this Lynx team is they're so dang deep that, they could throw anybody out there and I think they'll be all right. But, that's a luxury to have, to say the least.
I agree with you. I think they'll probably do the same old. You want the opposing team to adjust to you, not the other way around. So in game 1, if they throw out their normal 8-player rotation and they win it pretty convincingly, probably is just going to stay that way.
Yeah.
Rodney Cheryl's in the finals 50% of the time. She is. Happy birthday, Cheryl.
Yeah, shout out to Cheryl. Happy birthday.
But like, yeah, it's the plaque that they put at the new arena whenever they make it downtown, hopefully, so I don't have to drive across the city. Sorry, Mitch. But whenever they make that downtown, the plaque that Cheryl will have might need a second wall just for all of the qualifiers of what she's done. Going back to the series though, what do you kind of feel like the Mercury's path would be to win? I mean, obviously got to steal one in Minnesota. Like winning 3 in a row if you lose the first 2 is I mean, it's so hard, but
yeah.
like, do you feel like they have a path to steal the series just with kind of their current construction?
I do. I mean, it's kind of similar. I view them a little bit similar to Atlanta, as far as their bigs in the paint. And we saw that Minnesota had issues with that. Now Minnesota has faced both bigs for Phoenix, that being Alyssa Thomas and Satu Sabali during the year because they were healthy, and then they had their matchup, so they know what to expect there. Um, you know, I if kind of looking at what Golden State did to Minnesota, they did a lot of trapping. They switched things up defensively. And that kind of threw Minnesota out of sorts. I think Phoenix will try and do that same thing. And they maybe saw a recipe there that you can slow Minnesota down. But if Phoenix can turn Minnesota over, that's been the Achilles heel for the Lynx all season long. If they can turn them over, I think that they could steal a game, on the road.
Which for context, the Lynx ranked first in assist to turnover ratio, and
Yeah.
that's the nitpick we have is like,
Well,
you got to
right.
turn them over. That's
Right.
your only chance.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. Continue though, Mitch.
I think that that's a way that Phoenix could, try and get a heavy lead and then, kind of ride that out or escape with a win. But if they, and I keep going back to kind of what I talked about a little bit earlier with the X factors, but if Phoenix can maybe not to the same extent as Minnesota, but if they can kind of keep up with the Lynx a little bit in 3-point shooting, or at least limit Minnesota in their 3-point shooting, I think that kind of evens things out a little bit and makes things a little bit easier for Phoenix. So with those two things in mind, that is one thing that are kind of a couple areas that I think Phoenix could rattle Minnesota a little bit. And then also just, getting off to a hot start, like I mentioned, like that will be huge in these, especially in the games at Target Center. Like that, Phoenix needs to come out and get a double-digit lead right away. And if they can do that, you'll take the crowd out of it. And you could say that, flip side with Minnesota going to Phoenix for game 3, like that's something that you got to do. Every road team wants to take the crowd out of it and get out to a big lead early. But that's kind of the pathway for me. But I think it's going to be awfully tough for Phoenix to, not specifically win in Minnesota, but just to win the series in totality. If let's say it does go 5 games, I mean, you still go back to Minnesota and you have to deal with the Lynx fans who are, I always say, they're the craziest fans in the WNBA in the best way possible. The Lynx fans are awesome. I absolutely love Lynx fans, but you're in front of that Target Center crowd that will probably be 11, 12, 13, 14,000 plus people. They could probably even pack that arena. That is tough to play in, and that is no easy task to be able to do that. But I think it'll be tough for Phoenix. Long story short.
I feel the same. I mean, Dustin says in the chat, AT is a handful, but I like the size matchup better. It's been interesting since the game ended. The narrative is kind of like AT versus Fee, like who's going to have the. I think they'll probably cancel themselves out. I mean, they're both just going to have really hyper productive games where they are excelling, I think. But then you look up and down the roster, and Minnesota's 2 through 9 are just significantly better than Phoenix's.
Yeah.
I mean, Phoenix, not a great 3-point shooting team, not particularly Like nothing is like Golden State you could look at and you could say they are the number one team at defending the paint. They allow the least amount of points per paint. They at least allow the least amount of 2-point field goal percentage. Like here is where they could win. Force the Lynx to score inside. Game 1, the Lynx score 44 points inside. And it's just kind of like, oh, well, that sucks. Like it guess that didn't work.
Yeah.
Phoenix, I mean, it's going to have to be their size. I agree with you. Fast starts have to be important. And then they do force. I mean, again, they're not like the best in the league at it, but they do force a lot of turnovers, which helps. But I like you. I mean, I guess I'll pose the question to you, but do you feel like this series is going to go 4 or 5 games?
Yeah, I before I get to that, I just want to go back to a little bit and just talk about with Phoenix's big three, you're not going to be able to. You can maybe limit one of them. You're not going to limit 2 of them. You're not going to limit all 3 of them. But one way Minnesota can counter that, they need a nice, or maybe not a great series, but just a kind of average series from Courtney Williams. They need that third option. I know Cheryl Reeve has talked about this ad nauseum over the last 2-3 years that they've had a big 2 in Nafisa Collier and Kayla McBride, but they need that third option. So it will be vital for Courtney Williams to have a good series. And maybe that's not, putting up a bunch of points, but just being a nemesis or a kind of a peasant on the defensive end, or kind of being a headache on the defensive end, or, they just need to have a good series from her. And I think if they can do that, in Minnesota will be looking just fine. But to the point of the series, I kind of, as soon as I found out it was Phoenix, or I was watching that game, game 3 against Phoenix, New York, I was thinking about what the semifinals might look like, after Phoenix won that game. And initially I was like, I think this series will go 5. Well, now the more I dig into it a little bit more and kind of analyze things a little bit more, I think it'll go 4. I think Minnesota will win it in 4. I think the Lynx will win the first 2 games at home, and then Phoenix will win game 3. Minnesota will close things out in game 4. But it's not going to be a sweep. I really do not believe it'll be a sweep. And I say that Minnesota will probably surprise me and sweep, but I think that it'll ultimately be 4 games. And I think Minnesota will, if I had to predict the other side too, I think Minnesota and Las Vegas will meet in the finals.
I completely agree. I think it'll be 4. I don't see a path. I mean, I'm trying to be optimistic, and I haven't. At some point this week, or next week, I guess. No, it's Sunday. It's Saturday. Damn it. At some point next week, I'll have a Phoenix writer on to talk about the matchups a little bit more. But I just, this Lynx team is just so good. Like it's every time when I'm writing, I'm looking for a stat of like, oh, the Aces are like third in the Mercury are like third in the league at this. And then I look at who's ahead of them, and it's Minnesota and someone else. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, Minnesota even out rebounds them, which it's tough.
Yeah.
I do agree on your Courtney Williams. She needs to have a good season. Dustin adds here in the chat though, that Cheryl's gonna have a much quicker hook. I do think T saves a lot of those games. When Court is cratering, T somehow, like, it's the yin and the yang, where Court's having a bad day and T is just locked in.
Especially Dustin with how she's playing too. I mean, just the way she's playing right now, it makes it easier to have that hook on Courtney Williams. And if you watch Courtney Williams on the bench when Tatisha's in the game, she is her biggest fan. So there's
you would think Courtney is in the game.
Yeah. Yes.
Dustin also just says Aces in 3. I'm gonna be honest. This Fever team is I refuse to predict anything that has to do with this Fever team anymore, because I thought it was going to be Dream in 2 and it's just done. Like, it's a nice story, and they are just gritty. Like, this is a Stephanie White coach team.
I could see that series going forward too. It's just so tough to sweep a team, and especially in the semifinals, it's just kind of rare for that to happen. Las Vegas is really good. I mean, they're the better team in that series, but the way Indiana is playing, like they could steal a game on the road. I could definitely see that. They're scrappy, to your point. They're playing great team basketball. And I'm saying all of that, and they have like 17 players out for the season that are sitting behind the bench right now. Like it's unbelievable what they're doing. And if Caitlin Clark was in the lineup, man, I'd maybe give them, it would go 5 games, I think, but I could see them even upsetting that series. But I think,
like I said, I refuse to pick. I think the Aces are the far superior team just on paper and numbers and talent, but that Indiana team is just. Lan said it in her Defensive Player of the Year, one of the answers, that this team wins off of the power of friendship. Indiana might have some of that power of friendship stuff going on down
and
there.
credit to Steph
So.
White. Credit to Steph White for keeping that together, because that could have spiraled out of control very quickly. Indiana was even kind of in a position at one point where they were, maybe not going to make the playoffs. Or they were kind of sliding down the standings. And credit to Steph White for the job she's done, because I don't know if many coaches could hold something like that together, given all that Indiana's been through this season.
And keep the belief too, right? Like at some point, when just injury after injury, I mean, Sophie Cunningham goes down, and like I thought for sure that was going to be like the final straw of just like they've lost too much. Like they're losing their impromptu starters now, and she kept that belief high, which it's not lost on me that the 4 coaches remaining are Eric, Steph, Cheryl, and Becky, because they all have that ability to just figure it out and keep people believing.
Well, and look at those, a sign of that belief that Steph White has instilled in them. Look at the players that are out for the season. When you watch the Vegas and Indiana series, they'll show one of the probably 73 times they show Caitlin Clark on the bench. They'll show the bench quite often, and they will, all of those players that are out for the season, they are absolutely just cheering their team on. They're up off the bench. Like they are the biggest fans in that arena. And that's awesome. That goes a long way, and it shows just kind of the culture and the mindset that Steph White has kind of instilled in that team. And because it's a lot of times you see players go out for the season, A, they're maybe not even on the bench. And B, they're not, kind of hyping up their teammates like the Fever players have. So credit to them. And I didn't expect them to make it this far. And it's been a kind of a Cinderella run to some extent.
They do have the Commissioner's Cup curse, though, where they win it and then lose in the finals. So you never know.
Hey, we could do a Minnesota Indiana rematch. That's fine.
That'd be fun. I would enjoy that.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Be a lot more people in our media room.
Caitlin Clark will WWE entrance of like game 1. She's back playing.
That would be because I don't think they ever put her on IR, did they? They just said she was done for the year.
Yeah, I think so. But it would probably explode the internet, and probably all the TV stations would go down with the excitement.
That would be the true globe. That would be the true apocalypse. That's the final horseman running out, is Caitlin Clark ruining the internet by coming back in the finals.
It'd be Taylor Swift
here for it. I would love that. Yeah, I would love that.
The hype around Taylor Swift, that has nothing. That can't even shake a stick at what this Caitlin Clark return would be.
Oh my gosh, that is my new fever dream. Honor of Terry.
Shout out Terry.
Mitch, that's about all I had today. Anything you want to plug today, though?
No, just keep checking out our Hitting the Hardwood Network. Obviously, this podcast, my Hitting the Hardwood podcast, Terry's Lynx Happy Hour podcast. And then to all the people that have supported us through our Patreon page so far, greatly appreciate it. Over the last week or two, it's been awesome just seeing the support of people. If you guys want to support, you can find that at patreon.com/hitting the hardwood. I've been we've been plugging out some content through there that you get right into your inbox. It's nightly recaps of the WNBA action, all the latest news, all of that kind of stuff, early access to different things. So a lot of good stuff over there. And if you could support us, then that only helps us continue to do this, because we love doing it, and we want to keep doing it. So thank you to everybody, and thank you, Andrew, for having me on.
100%. The 300 and what the tickers say now, 378 people that have
Let's
come
go.
by to say what's up. Appreciate all of you guys. It's always a blast doing these live streams with you, Mitch. And are you going to be at the game tomorrow? Can
I will
people
be.
throw stuff at you?
Anybody can throw stuff at me, and if you miss me, you'll probably hit Terry or Andrew. So hopefully you don't have good aim. But I will be down there on Sunday, and looking forward to seeing Target Center rocking.
Okay, that's what we're gonna do. All right, everybody. Thanks, and until Sunday post game, we'll catch you then.